Yep,
All right.
I see it.
All right, there we go. Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for joining. I am with Harper Kincaid. She is a fabulous cozy mystery author, romance author, amazing person. And I'm so glad that you have agreed to take some time out of your evening to chat with me. Today we're just going to just talk about all things bookish. I know that you recently had your first cozy mystery book come out last month, 2 months ago. Time flies, right?
It flies. Plus, they had it kept getting delayed, and then the ebook was May 12th, which was fine, and the audiobook.
Right. Yep.
So a lot of people got it that way, but then us cozy mystery people like our print books, and so everyone was like, okay, when is the coming out?
Can I get the physical copy?
So July 7th was when that finally came out. So it's
awesome.
So we're really recent. We're actually doing you and I are on the right track. And I hope it's around here somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, but everyone can.
Well, that's good for anybody who wants to pick it up physically or any of their preferred methods once we're done with this. So I guess just to kind of get the preliminaries out of the way, tell us a little bit about the book and you've written multiple. Tell us a little bit about your cozy mystery one that just came out. So if those who are watching this are cozy mystery lovers, they can be hooked in, because I have a copy. I read it. I loved it. We'll talk about that afterward. But yeah, go ahead and give a little quick elevator pitch.
Oh, sure. Which, by the way, I'm terrible at these, so we're gonna try.
It's a long elevator. It's like Empire.
It's a long elevator. Okay, cool. I like that. That was the best comeback line. So imagine, we've got a millennial Southern sassy feminist who has her own strong opinions in a small, actually not so small. See, Vienna's really not Southern. She has more of a Southern background, but Vienna has what we call all the charm of the North and all the efficiency of the South. So
you know what? Reading now that you mentioned it, that's very accurate,
right? So I've learned to love that about Vienna, and I make it sound more of a small town than it is, but it's really more of like the northwest part of Vienna where I live, and so we have the cast of characters. I will admit it's a revenge fantasy book. The mean girl in town gets whacked, and everyone thinks it's her because, they both, cross the streams with Quinn's ex-boyfriend, was Trisha Pemberley's fiance. And, it was a little bit of that. It wasn't even frenemies. It was just mean girl stuff that was happening to Quinn King, who's our protagonist, our heroine, who's a bookbinder. She's, from the town. She did a little travel. She's back. And, she's in that place. I purposely wanted her to be younger because I wanted us to see her kind of grow up, So she starts off 25, a millennial. Well, actually, is 25 a millennial still?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. It's a weird, large gap, but I'm pretty sure that's still within it.
So, exactly. So she's got that combination of that, plus I threw in some Gen X stuff because, hello, that's me. And, and I gave her that, basically saying that she hung out with older people.
I can relate to that. So I think a lot of cozy readers are going to love that.
I wanted to throw something in for the young and not so young, and so she with her dog Ruff Barker Ginsburg, right?
I know. I'm so sorry to interrupt. That is when I first heard that name, I fell in love, and that's so. That's so cheeky and brilliant of you to have added in there.
Can I tell you a funny story? And so with her and the dog, and there's all these wonderful characters. A cousin, best friend who's trying to become a nun, who should not really become a nun, but it's sort of a modern day Sound of Music with that one. But let me just, on a side note, so the idea for the story was this editor and this publishing house that I really wanted to get part of. And I was at an RWA conference with my agent, and I was like, okay, so what are people interested in? I want to do cozy, and I've been reading it my whole time, and I will always love romance, but I want to have a change. And she's like, well, I have this editor at X and X house who wants a Southern feminist with a dog and a nun. And so someone else.
Wow.
Guess what? She was the first to turn it down. Isn't that funny?
People they don't know what they want, honestly, because they get it and then clearly she missed out.
Well, and so I sent it to my agent, Jill Marshall, and she was like, you got a lot on the page, but it works. Like, it just, I don't know how you did it, but it works. And I'm like, because that's kind of me, I'm a little all over the place. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's that funny story. And so I always someday maybe when I'm really old and I don't care, I'll say who it was. But at this point, and then it ended up here's the irony, just for other future writers and people trying to do it. You think you want something so badly, or to work with somebody, or to be part of a house, and I was preying on it, and I was throwing in my Jewish side, I was throwing in my Christian side. I'm like, we're just going to put it all in here. Right. And then I ended up hearing from some other friends of mine, some who were romance, but definitely some who were doing the cozy stuff, that the house wasn't treating them so well. And I didn't hear that till way after I got rejected. So,
so it all worked out in the end for the best, definitely.
I love Crooked Lane. It works out good for me. So
yay. They have a lot of wonderful cozy authors. So you're in great company.
Well, you have good taste, so not necessarily because of me. I love the show anyway, so I watch it to see. There's a lot of cozies that come out, and so there's like you and like 2 other shows that I'm like, okay, tell me, because there's everyone's got their subgenre.
And that's one of the reasons why I love cozies, because, and I preach this to everybody who I try to bring on to cozies, that at the end of the day, like, you take away the genre name, there's something for everyone. So as long as you are down with a mystery, anything that you like under the sun, whatever hobby, whatever location, there is for sure not even just one story, but more likely a series that's about it, which is wonderful. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit, because you got your start. I'm going to make some assumptions here just based off of, your bibliography, but you got your start doing romance, which I am also a huge fan of. But, and you touched on this really briefly, but what made you want to do the switch to try your hand at cozies?
There's a couple of things. One was, this is being brutally honest, I love romance. I can write a little. I can write it, but it wasn't, I wasn't great at it. I would read other people's stuff. I would read Kara McKenna, or I would read Christian Ashley, or very different types, by the way.
Yeah.
I think my first 2 books sound like Christian Ashley wannabes. I'm being perfectly honest. They were my writing school, and so I would read them, and I still, there's certain ones that still get me teary because they were just done so well. Come on. These people are, and I would read it and I would know what would make it good, and I couldn't do it. And I did like 4 or 5 books. I tried, and I don't want to say that they were bad. They're just great. And so I was like, and then another part of it was, a lot of the stories that I wanted to try to examine, I wanted to do a little bit more older heroine, 40 plus. And I'm not the only one who's had this. Literally saw panels on romance who were like, who would want to read that? And I'm like, bleep out what I would want to say.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of who reads romance.
That's very surprising.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, things are, and so that was that part of it. So here I came, and, I wasn't sure. I think that writing cozies, first, I just have a lot more fun doing it. And I think that it's the red herrings, and it's sort of the twists and turns. And, my tagline that I've been saying in interviews, but I'm going to still say it here, is much better killing people than having them fall in love. So
it could be a lot more funner too, I'm sure.
It's true. I love to research poisons and mythology and how long it takes to have someone die. Yeah. I'm a gruesome chick, I guess. So, but it's not gruesome because I can't handle gore.
Right. It's just the right amount of fade to black death and all of that. But I will say, and I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation. If I knew you wrote romance first, or after I read your book, but a lot of the romance comes through with Quinn
That's true.
and the sheriff, the kind of
Yeah.
will they, won't they. And, you know, obviously I have read a lot of cozies, and there is not all the time, but a lot of time there is the heroine with the will they, won't they.
Yes.
But the way that you wrote it, the romance comes through a lot more genuine and
Oh,
as an
good.
actual
So maybe I did learn something. Okay.
side plot you want to care about. Yeah. So I just
Yeah.
want to say, you know, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, because I was really hooked in that, whereas opposed to, and trust me, I'm not just blowing smoke, I promise.
No, I
But you know,
appreciate
other
that.
stories, it's something where it's like, oh, okay, I don't really care if her and Joey get together, whatever. But here, you know, the way the descriptions of how she and the sheriff and they have history, and I'm like, I really want to know this time. So
Good.
yeah, that's really interesting.
Well, that's funny. It's maybe that I can do that well because in romance, when I was single back in 1912, you know, I've been married a long time, but like it was that part of it that I enjoyed the most. The like,
Mm,
does he like me? Doesn't he? Like at the
yeah,
time, you don't
yeah.
necessarily like it, but like look back, and that's sort of the part that I miss a little bit. Is
Uh-huh,
that
uh-huh.
so? I think that's probably. I'm guessing that's why maybe I write it better, but you know, and then once that they have you and stuff, then I get bored, which was me
That's
as a
usually
single.
always how it
Like, oh,
goes.
I have you now.
It's like, oh, okay, well, you're here, so
I'm just
all right.
a
Well,
little bit.
speaking of kind of like unexpected, I guess, details in your story, I kind of want to switch gears from romance to the complete opposite, which is Sister Daria, who I love. And just like a quick note to the listeners, in case you missed it when Harper was giving the spiel,
Yeah,
that's Quinn's cousin, who is she a nun in training still, or is
yeah.
she, okay, yeah. And you mentioned very briefly, talk to me a little bit about her journey, because it seemed like
Oh, it's gonna
I don't
get
know
a
if I
lot
want to
more
say this
interesting.
too.
Yeah,
Okay, good. I was gonna
yeah,
say I don't know if my question gives anything away, but it seems like she was still kind of trying to find herself in the story,
yeah.
which is another element that I really enjoyed,
Oh, good.
you know, kind of following along with her. And there were some conversations between her and Quinn that became a lot more deep than I expected in a cozy mystery. And I say that in a good way,
Yeah. No, I
because
appreciate
they're cousins, they're best friends. And usually when you have those cozy side characters, they're just kind of there for the jokes. But she took it to that. I mean, there's jokes, obviously, and
that. No,
she's
I know what you're trying to say. You don't have to
yeah,
clarify. Yeah, no, that they have their own backstories, and I mean, frankly,
yeah,
Sister Daria is like my favorite. I mean,
yes.
come on, you know, she has this. You know, she can hotwire cars. You know, she has a juvie record. I mean, and then
Mm-hmm,
she decides, you know, and she was a social worker, which that's actually
mm-hmm,
not that strange of a trajectory because a lot of people who were sort of in trouble in their lives like end up, you know, getting their
mm-hmm.
stuff together and then wanted,
Uh-huh.
you know, so
Pay it
that part
forward, yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm,
And she's a novitiate. I have to, you know, I'm trying to sometimes the language. I mean, she's an Anglican novitiate. She's not
mm-hmm,
which is more common in England, and
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
was my little slight ode to what was it called? Called The Midwife, the one that show.
Oh, the show,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
obsessed with it while I was writing the first book, and I'm
I
like,
love it.
why don't we have these nuns here, like with their little cute little bikes, and you know? So I
Yeah,
couldn't quite go that far, but I figured let them have the rescue operation with the you know
I love
a
that.
way to throw in the dogs because I'm a dog. I'm a pet lover, so it's all good. But
Yeah, and that
um,
really shined through.
yeah, I mean, I to be really and this is something I haven't told anybody else. So yes, I'm Jewish, born and raised, but
Mm-hmm,
around the time that even before I was writing it, but at the time that I was writing it, um, you know, I had had this other experience of faith.
mm-hmm.
You know, when you're, you know, a nice Jewish girl with nice New York Jewish parents, you know, you're like, well, I mean, Jesus is cool, but I'm not supposed to like think, you know, it's, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you almost feel like it's this weird, you know, and it's a very deeply entrenched, you know, you know, I was sort of falling in love with this other part of creation.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
yet I also had my, I mean, there's some people who sort of have this sort of self-hating feeling about their background. I
mm-hmm,
was still am like really loud and proud, you know, Jewish girl,
mm-hmm,
uh,
mm-hmm.
love my trips to Israel. You know, I'm very, you know, so that part was very comfortable for me. So she's going through her, like, is this the life I want or not? It was really just an extension of something that I kind of was going through. And so now I just say I'm a Juicen because I'm like, you know,
Why not?
why not? And don't make me choose. I'm a Gemini. I need, no, I'm making a joke out of it, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and look, there are relatives of mine who would be like, you know, plotzing, like not in a good way. You know, it would be a big deal. But I made the deal with Jesus. I was never going to lie. You know, if someone asked me, I was going to tell them. But if it was someone who I knew was going to have an issue, I wasn't going to necessarily bring it up. So that was sort of my way of at least dealing with that piece, because you want to be authentic.
Yeah.
I know we're getting to a deeper thing, but that was really what was going on.
Yeah.
And it still kind of does. I mean, I have moments where I feel really guilty, you know, like, you know, what my people are, you know, turning in their graves, you know, but I know this is much deeper than the cozy goes, but
that's okay.
But keep it in there because, I mean, you know, that's, you know, listen, anything that you write, whether, even if it's light and entertaining, there is something that you're just looking for the escape, which is totally cool, or you're looking for the escape, but you're sort of trying to work out the other stuff while you're looking for the escape. So Daria is that she's much more of a, I mean, can I say badass here? I mean, you know, she's just, she's badass and much more than I was. I mean, I certainly things back in the day. I mean, I can't even admit them on camera because I have a police officer friend who told me those are still actually, you know, offenses. Like there's no time out on that. So I'm going to just leave that alone. But so I related to her, you know, and so she's trying to, you know, I think sometimes when people are, you know, reckless or what have you, it's a combination of that they're in pain, and sometimes they're just also searching for something bigger than themselves, and they go the wrong way. So she's on the right track, but she's going to have a couple of things that happen in book 2. Her story is going to really, it's going to be, honestly, like Quinn will still obviously still be the narrator. I'm actually toying as I'm writing book 2. We should actually talk about this. I don't know, like in romance, you can go back and forth with like, the hero's time, the heroine. I almost want to switch it like back and forth between Quinn and Sister Daria.
That would be so fascinating. I don't know if I've ever read a cozy like that, but I am game, and that sounds super interesting. Yeah, especially because obviously take any opinion I say with a grain of salt because I am not an agent, but she was such a standout character in the first book, and especially since kind of her journey didn't have a complete ending, that you are compelled to want to know what happens. And since she was, along with Quinn, as kind of like her right-hand woman trying to solve the mystery, then it seems like it makes sense as a good segue.
You know, so I'm going to seriously consider it, because I'll tell you that I've loved writing book 2, but between the quarantine and Corona and the world on fire, words have been a lot harder. I will,
of course, understandably.
So, I mean, the viewers don't know this, but like, I mean, we had to reschedule a bunch of times because I was like, I can't, you know, I can't. You know.
We weren't mentally prepared to come together.
We weren't prepared.
But,
we weren't ready.
You know, now we are, and it's fabulous. But our chat's fabulous. The world is still on fire, obviously. But
you know, I was a history student years ago. I was a historian. I was my first grad degree of that I'm still paying for. But I used to go, I wonder what it was like in 1968. I would love to go back to the 60s and the 70s. And now my mom used to always say to me, it was scary. It was like you just didn't know what was going to happen. And now I'm like, be careful what you wish for in 1968. Yeah, I mean,
in your defense, they glamorize it on TV, and the fashion was awesome. So I mean, I get that. I
need to change. So you know, this is what's been needed, and you want the change. You just don't want anyone to get hurt anymore. You know, you just
exactly.
That's what scares me. Is, you know, you see people you love, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the protest," and you're like, "Okay," you know, and you want them to do it. You want them to feel like they can express themselves, but you know, you get worried. I'm sorry, the mother in me comes out.
No, it's fine.
I'm like, can't we just sit with our cozies and have hot cocoa and like forget, you know?
I mean, it's definitely something that I'm sure not only myself, but a lot of viewers have probably kind of struggled with lately, is balancing what can I do, or how
Yep.
can we make things better, while also trying to keep your sanity. And, obviously that is the
You just nailed it
upside
so
of
beautifully. I'm
escaping
gonna let
into
you go.
books.
Yeah,
Well,
you
yeah,
did.
it's almost like, watch a little news and, sign some petitions and then snuggle up and read a couple of chapters.
You're
It's
right. It's
all about
self-care.
balance.
Self-care.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that
You'd
is
think that the
exactly what I
professional
did with.
social worker would know this. So
You do, but I mean, you see the brunt of it. Meanwhile, I'm kind of over here doing exactly that, of sign a little of this, research a little of that, read a few chapters, and that's exactly where I was when I was reading your book. But
okay.
it's so funny that you mentioned, lost my train of thought here because I'm like all over the place. I wanted to talk a little bit about where you got the idea, or rather, what made you choose bookbinding as kind of her niche.
Right.
Because we've talked about this before earlier, but I love a good like bookish cozy, and bookbinding is one of those that I think is satisfies that, but it's still unique enough.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, what went into that? Did you do, how intense was your research? I'm sure you went down that Google rabbit hole. Can
I'm a girl who loves
you find a
research.
book now? Is what we want to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so here's the thing. So when I first sent out the proposal and it was up for auction, and I wanted to go with Crooked Lane, and they were looking for it too, which was great. And then they were like, "Yeah, but it needs a little something else." Like I just had her working in the bookstore, and they're
I
like,
see.
"That's not quite enough." And here's the irony: is that I actually worked in the bookstore that this is based on. I basically,
Fun.
yeah, and I did it because I wanted to learn the book business and talk
Uh-huh.
about getting depressed. But no, anyway, but no, I went in there and to work there. And the truth of the matter is, I almost wanted to say to like the publishers, like, working in the bookstore is enough work. Like there's a lot that goes on there. But
Yeah,
on
yeah,
paper, I could see like, you want to have something that's special. And I
yeah,
understood what
yeah.
they were saying. So that's when the bookbinding came up. And I
Mm-hmm.
did do my deep dive research. Some of it definitely comes through in the first book. It's not, it's the kind of thing where it will come up in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, she loves it, but there's going
Mm-hmm.
to be other things that will be coming about professionally also for her. So we're going to
Oh,
have to mix
okay.
that up with something else. Like there's a lot of, so even though Vienna doesn't usually change that much, there's going to be a lot of changes that happen. And so
Mm-hmm.
she's going to have to make some adapting. She's going to have to adapt to some of that too. But yeah,
Ooh,
bookbinding, first of all, thank God for YouTube because you can learn anything. And,
right?
um, you know, I got to tell you, seeing them, they're taking like this rare first edition. And they're like, okay, we're going
Mm-hmm.
to fix the little binding, rip. And I'm like, what did you just do? Like,
I know. I don't even like to dog ear the pages of books that I read, so I
right.
know I have a small heart attack.
So you have a heart attack when you see what they do. It's like watching a
Yeah.
surgeon work because they are ripping it apart and then they're
Mm-hmm.
stitching it back together really carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got very particular, bindings and threads and
Mm-hmm.
covers and plates and it's all sorts of fun stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I know that a lot of people would like to see it actually being incorporated into the mystery. And
Mm-hmm.
you're probably gonna have to wait for book 3 for that to be more into the actual, like the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the book binding that either it's solved or that there's an extra clue or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, we did
Yeah.
a little bit of that in book 1 with the old yearbooks, that were being
Right.
redone, and that was
Right.
a way of doing it. But that I mean, it's there'll be more coming. But there's twists and
Yeah.
turns. So
Yeah, and I mean, and I keep harping about this, definitely no pun intended, but I keep harping about this, but I just, your cozy is so fresh and unique because there's a lot going on in a good way. Like
okay, good.
there's so many different avenues. And so you were mentioning earlier how, book 3, it might incorporate the bookbinding into the mystery, but the fact that you can go and have her just have that be kind of her side job and it not necessarily take the forefront, and
Yeah.
yet you're still interested in reading about everything that's going on with her. I mean, that really says a lot about just like the overall storytelling, because
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm on board if Sister Daria is telling the next one, or if there's a book
Yeah,
signing in the next one, or
we may have to play
I
with
will
that,
have to say, are we going to see more of the nuns and the rescue center? Because
right?
that was I love that too.
It could honestly have be its own little like offshoot. I mean, because these are,
It really can.
and I'm tempted. It's and
Maybe a short story novella, or something to give us
you
more
can.
of
I
the
mean,
nuns.
if it gets really popular, I mean, I will dance for you. That is however much you want it. Listen, this is my first cozy. Yes, I've been in publishing. I am a minor figure in that, and I totally understand, and that's totally fine. So the fact that people are being open to me coming into this genre, they've been
Mm-hmm.
so incredibly generous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take that for granted. There's a lot of cozies out there. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
books out there. I mean, you work in a bookstore, you know what you end up finding? Like, first of all, you can never read enough books. And you realize these publishers, like the big ones and the small ones, like,
Mm-hmm.
that them sending you their advanced reader copy, that print copy, took
Mm-hmm.
out whatever little extra budget that they loved it so much and they believed in it that they're sending my little bookstore that arc. And it ends
Mm-hmm.
up in a big bin. And yes, we get to take what we want and read and write reviews for it, but a lot of it sits there because you can't read, so and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like those are book babies.
Yeah.
And I really feel that way, and that's someone's whole
Yeah.
life on the page. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
and I really get what that author did for that, and
Mm-hmm.
so the fact that To Kill a Mockingjay has gotten some traction, the fact that someone of your level wants to talk to me, I'm just no, I'm thrilled because my book could have ended up in the bin,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I don't mean to get emotional about that. But
It's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's so, I think, and I completely understand what you're saying. And as a reader, I feel similarly, but from the other side of the table, because there are a lot of books out there. And I think when you find one that just speaks to you, or you get so excited and you get like high pitched talking about it with
oh,
the
good.
author,
That
that
is
means a lot.
that makes my whole freaking week. I mean, are you kidding? That's because that's what you want. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't write cozy because you're not going to solve the world's medical crisis or political. You're not. And you're not,
Mm-hmm.
nor should you. You are here to entertain people. You are here to give them something to think about. You want to
Mm-hmm.
give them a little bit of a journey.
Yep.
It's smart escapism.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And
That's a great way to put it.
so that was just so the fact that it did anything for you is just freaking gravy. And so I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled you liked it. I'm thrilled that you want to read more about it.
I'm thrilled that there's more. You're already talking about book 3, so I'm like, oh,
not
great.
that they've asked for it, by the way. They've only given me a contract for 2, but I'm trying to be optimistic. So
Yeah, put it out there.
But the second one is going to have, I'll give you a little, it's going to have a lot more theater references. It's going to be,
Oh, I love that.
so, I mean, it's still books, but, but this is going to be a segue into theater, and there's going to be some thespian characters that sort of get into the mix. That's a nice little,
I like that little nugget there that you dropped.
You get the first nuggets always. You will always get the first of my nugget platter.
I love it. So then, and don't like say too much about it, but that just kind of brought to mind a question, because I wanted to ask you in terms of like the theater aspect. I know that Vienna is obviously real. Is there a theater culture in there, or where did you want to, like, how much of the town is in the books?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So, it is, my really good friend of mine, who's from here, like born and raised, and so were her parents. I mean, they're she's like, it's Vienna, but you zhuzhed it up. And so,
it is. I'm a good zhuzhing. That's great.
I zhuzhed. And so, so honestly, the whole thing with theater is, I mean, my whole family loves it. My oldest daughter, kind of goes in and out of theater on a professional level. But really, DC is the theater town. A lot of really great original work will
Mm-hmm.
start between DC theaters like Woolly Mammoth. You have the Signature
Mm-hmm.
Theater, obviously in Arlington, which tends to have more of the traditional, theater. Catholic University has its own amazing
Mm-hmm.
scene there. There's the Round House Theater, so it's a huge theater scene, and it's a lot of stuff that people work out there, the kinks, and see
Mm-hmm.
how it
Mm-hmm.
does, and then they bring it to New York. You know,
Ah, okay. Uh-huh.
and also DC has its own thing that stays here. Like it's a very different scene here than it is
Mm-hmm.
in New York, and probably a lot
Mm-hmm.
more accessible in the sense of like the prices are cheaper, so like
Yeah.
you can actually go for like, a bite and well, when we were allowed out of the house,
Right, right. You can
you
actually make
can
a night
see
of it.
you can get a decent seat with an original play with someone making a small but livable wage. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't even go to concerts anymore. We're like, yeah, I may like some of the stuff I used to see, but I'm not spending
Mm-hmm. No,
$1,000 a ticket.
no.
Thank God Hamilton came to Disney Plus because
Right? I
right,
just watched it and loved it, but I told my husband the same thing. I'm like, yeah, just
yeah,
I'd rather sit and watch from the comfort of my home instead of, waiting 4 years
I know.
and $2,000
Hey,
to
look, and there's
maybe get the
nothing compared
lottery.
to going. Listen, I love New York and
I'm
I love
sure.
all that
Yeah, of
stuff,
course.
but want to hear a heartbreaking story? So, like,
Oh gosh, yes, tell me.
RWA was in New York. I'm trying to think, was it in 16 or 15? Whenever the last time or two times ago was in New York, and I'm there
Uh-huh.
and I'm loving it because it was, that was its heyday, at least, for certain
Yeah.
things, and you got to see your friends.
Yep.
And so a very good friend of mine, who writes romance, him and his husband
Mhm.
were there, and his husband, has nothing to do during the day because he's got,
Right.
you know, and I'm like, so what are you going to go see? And he says, well, I heard about this one called, I think it's Hamilton, and it was $10 a ticket. They were practically giving them away, and I said, you mean the Treasury, the Secretary of the Treasury back in the
Right.
Revolutionary War?
Right, of course.
Yeah, it's about like 3.5 hours. And I said, you couldn't pay me. It's almost, I mean,
You're not the only one who thought that though, because it wasn't on Broadway yet. And I
no,
mean, let's be honest, the name alone, it's like, I took history class. Why am I going to pay to see people sing about that? But
I mean,
you
and
could
I studied
almost say that
history.
about anything because,
I,
cats, it's
no,
cats on the stage or whatever.
no, that's all right. We can take this moment to realize the many things I've missed in life. Oh, there's this beachfront property that is in foreclosure. No, I'm just kidding. But for $10, you
Right.
want that? No,
Do you want to go half on a lottery ticket? Oh, no, it's
no,
fine.
I'm fine. So that's how I feel about that. So, and my daughter got to see it, which was great. Like
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll pay for her to go, but I wasn't going to pay for me to go, which sounds
Yeah.
terrible.
That's a very mom thing.
It's a mom thing. But I mean, I saw plenty of things on in New York, but I would
Right.
see them when they were kind of in previews or they were just sort of testing it out. And
Yeah.
so the theater thing is obviously I'm a little obsessed with theater and we love it. And I can't seem to give a short answer to a question. And I'm sorry, I've been
That's fine. No, but it's really interesting because I had no idea. I'm not a theater buff by any means. And so naturally, when I think theater, I am probably one of the typical ones who think of New York. So it's really interesting to know that DC not only has its own scene, which I know a lot of
yeah,
cities do, but the fact that they can even be kind of test markets. And I think just in general, yeah, it's great for the theater to still be able to produce, those wonders like Hamilton. But I think it's equally as important to be able to afford to go, like you said, and make it
yep,
accessible for people to have a night on the town without breaking the bank, um,
absolutely.
and still enjoy themselves.
Absolutely. In Vienna, which is a real place, they don't have a theater like a local theater like that. You have to kind of
Mm-hmm.
go a little bit more inland for that, but
Mm-hmm.
or inside the Beltway. But we do have something called Jamming Java, which is
Uh-huh.
it's a concert. It's a smaller concert hall, but
Uh-huh.
it started off as a coffee house with like one little stage, and
Yeah.
they've zhuzhed it up, and they usually have the acts who are either sort of on their way up or on their way, But you know what? Sign me up for that, because you're sitting in your table, you're getting to order your stuff. It's not like dinner theater where like people are being noisy.
Right.
But it's very intimate, and I have seen some of the
Mhm.
most amazing acts, and I've seen them for $30. And I'm like, that's me. I'm not going to
Yeah.
go see, I don't know, Billie Eilish is probably fabulous, but I'm not going to go spend $500 for it.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah, and there's something to be had about those intimate settings, because I've been to
Yeah.
concerts like that, and I far prefer them
Who do
to
you
those
like?
large
What do you
stadiums.
like to listen to?
I mean, I listen to a little bit of everything. Um, there is this, oh gosh, of course now I don't even remember his
You'll
name,
think
and
of it
I'm so
later.
embarrassed that I'm on camera. Yeah, I'll think of it later. You put me on the spot, but
I'm sorry.
regardless, it's okay. I love those intimate settings, like you're saying, and I think that you're not missing. Not to say that if you're in the big venue, you don't get that rush. Obviously, you do,
Absolutely.
but you're not missing that. You're still getting that exhilarated
Yeah.
feeling when you're sitting at your intimate table and it's
Listen, I
dark.
did
I love
Lollapalooza.
those.
My Lollapalooza was the same as the baby boomers Woodstock. And you know what? It was raining, it was hot and muggy, and I was in the mud, and I was not happy. I mean, I had a good
Yep.
time, but I was not
Right.
happy. And I was
Right.
just like, this is what Woodstock was. I bet. This is just
It's only glamorous when you say it in stories, but when you have to wait in line for a muddy porta potty that's already been used, you're like,
well,
I could
actually,
take
I had one of
it
my parents' friends had said to me years ago, because she had actually gone, and she says that she always knew if someone was lying about going to Woodstock, if they said that they just had this amazing time, because most everyone was freaking miserable, and I was just, unless you were stoned out of your mind, which
Right, of course. Right.
that was that. So
One or the other.
exactly,
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so we've talked about music. I feel like this is a good segue then to talk about I guess I don't know if this is a good segue. I just want to ask you anyway.
yeah,
But tell me some of your favorite cozies, because I think it's always interesting. I
yeah,
feel like you can learn a lot about a person depending on the kind that they like, maybe.
yes.
So,
I'll
what are
I'll
your
name.
faves? What are your most recent?
I love Misty Simon for, first of all, her generous heart, because she helped me sort of fix my proposal.
Oh,
And
yay.
but I love her cozy. She's snarky without being mean.
Hmm.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yep.
And so I love her dialogue. I mean, I love Ellen Byron. I mean, she's just. I mean, if when you see her writing resume, you can understand why her cozies are so great. And I
Hmm.
lived in New Orleans for years, so the Cajun cozies, like
Yeah.
probably a little bit of like, oh wow, I know what that's like.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
authentic. She does her research. She's able to convey that culture, without making it a caricature.
Hmm.
That's not an
Hmm.
easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
She's an Italian girl from New York. I love my Italians.
Yeah.
I love anything New York and what have you.
Hmm.
And yet then I'll switch around, and then it's Amanda Flower, and I'm sitting here falling in love with Amish fudge places. And I'm like, this is
I've
not
heard
me.
so many great things about that series, and I've got to be honest, and this is me shamefully admitting my not bias,
No,
but
it's okay.
obviously, cozy is the escape. Like, you flock to things that either sound interesting or you're interested in.
Yeah,
And I see Amish, and I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be enough action for me to hold on to. Like, it has nothing to do with the
right.
lack of gore, because obviously no cozies have that. But
Yeah.
there's something that had prevented me from pulling the trigger. But I just really need to hop on board already,
You know
because
what?
I've heard great things.
I was never into Amish romance. That was just never my
Hmm.
gig. And
Right.
speaking of someone, when I was exploring all this Christian stuff, I decided to give Christian romance a shot, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, this just doesn't feel like it. Just and there's some
Yeah.
people who probably do it really well. Maybe I didn't read it. So please educate me if I'm wrong. But the one
No, same. Yeah.
it just felt it felt like it was more preachy versus the story. I mean, there's some people out there who,
Yeah.
like, no, the whole point about it is you're supposed to be broken and messy and
Hmm. Hmm.
cursing and kind of, maybe you're a little bit of a whore or whatever it
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then you're like, redeemed in this way. And that's what I
Yep,
kind of
yep,
want to see, because,
yep.
I love Mary Magdalene. She's one of my favorite characters of the Bible, you know.
Yeah.
Like, she's supposed to be the one that's the most fallen. In the meantime, he regards her as the one with the purest heart, with how she loves
Mhm.
him and how he loves her,
Mhm.
you know. And
Mhm.
like, she takes her own hair to wipe the tears. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, I must have been Catholic.
No, yeah, but I mean I mean it's
You know
kind
what
of
I mean?
ironic because if
That's what
that
I
story
want to
was actually
see.
told,
Like,
right, that would not
I love you
necessarily be
enough
a
that I'm
Christian
gonna
romance.
wipe the mud off of your feet with my tears
That's
and my
true love right there.
yeah, you love me
If
enough that you're gonna
I read that
crucify
in a book,
yourself,
I would be sobbing, honestly. Like,
right?
it's so sweet, but ironically, it probably wouldn't be categorized as a Christian romance. But I completely understand what you mean, because I feel like when it comes to the romance, there are certain elements that I think, oh, yeah, I feel like I have to preface this. I totally agree with you. Maybe we just haven't read the right ones, but a lot of times I think kind of chastity can be mistaken for boring,
Yeah.
or flawless. And nobody wants to read about somebody who is just there and doesn't really
I
have
didn't
any
even want to
flaws
see
or no
yourself very much
struggles.
when I was a kid. No, I mean, you're just trying too hard. Like, show me your mess,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you can
Yep.
do that in Cozy, you know. And I think
Yep.
there's some writers out there who do it really well. There's some that it's more about the environment sometimes. Like, I want to be in
Hmm.
Scotland, or I want to be, I want to visit Britain in 1940,
Yep.
and
Yep.
Amanda Flower, and I say that just as the example in terms of Amish cozy, you know, that's the only Amish cozy I gave a chance, and I just happened to really like
Hmm.
her. She's a good writer, and
She is, yeah, yeah.
and there's an earnestness about that culture. Now, maybe it's,
Hmm.
I don't know enough about it, but just from
Hmm.
the cheap seats here, there was
Hmm.
something about it that made me feel like it was kind of getting back to something good and trying to be good.
Yeah,
Not
right.
good with pure, just good meaning earnest. And so
Yes,
that's something.
yes.
And then you have fudge, and then you have cakes.
I mean, you had me at fudge, but I love that. I get what you mean, because that feeling that you get when you read certain scenes, that I'm sure, I mean, if
And
her
their heart just comes
um
through. Their heart comes through, and she
yeah,
has a lot of
yeah,
heart. And the same thing sometimes with even the snarky ones. I mean, frankly, those are the ones who have, you know, had the battle scars, and yet they're still showing
yeah,
up. I mean,
love those.
that's big kahunas,
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because when you've got the curmudgeon neighbor who's been kind of a dick the whole time, like, do something sweet but not brag about it, I'm just like, oh
That
God, I love you.
that's
That,
my
yeah, I
jam.
completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's funny to me to see, and I always I you can't really be in traditional publish. I mean, frankly, even self-publishing indie, you can't
Hmm.
have an audience without you hitting a nerve with something, you know.
Obviously, yeah, of course.
So, and there's so much out there, and I welcome hybrid, I welcome indie, I welcome traditional. I do think it's
Hmm.
harder with traditional in the sense that you want to do something different, but
Hmm.
they also have their formulas of what they think works. And so I was really just trying
Yeah.
to push enough of the boundary with this cozy while still staying within
Hmm.
the parameters of cozy. I didn't want to curse there. I didn't want to put sex on
Hmm.
the page. I mean, that was a nice
Hmm.
challenge for someone who's, felt, I'm a foul mouthed girl, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so and I used to have, my grandfather used to always say, I mean, he just, he thought of it as, I mean, I was a baby at the time, so I wasn't cursing, but my mom would tell me that if he would hear someone cursing, he would just be like, out of all the words in the English language, that's what you came up with. Okay. Well, he was a little up his own, whatever, but that's okay. You know what? There's something to that. Like, and I kind of took that on
Yeah.
as a challenge. I'm like, okay, so how can
Hmm.
I express like the anger or the depth of this or whatever without saying M or F? Like, how could I do that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's a personal
so
challenge, because it's like, let's be honest, in real life,
it feels really
I'd
good.
be censored, but I can't really say that on the page. So
It's true.
yeah.
And then the research, this is the social work part of me. Research shows that cursing actually like cuts your cortisol levels in half in your brain. That's the stress hormone that goes to your
Uh-huh.
prefrontal cortex. So like,
Uh-huh.
if you get flooded with cortisol, you can't make decisions because you're in fight or flight.
Mm.
But for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, cursing, like just a whole whatever it is,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I tell that to my parents of teens. I'm
Love
like,
it.
just let them vent a little. I said, it'll help them
Yeah.
calm down. I said, just
Yeah.
let
Get
me
it
listen to
out, and
grandma.
then you can think rationally. I'm going to use that next. I mean, well, luckily,
You
or
have a
not
pretty
luckily,
clean mouth.
however we want to see it, I don't have anyone in my life who kind of frowns on that. Let's be honest, my mom has a
Yeah.
mouth of a sailor. So I'm not clutching my pearls or anything like that. But I'm going to keep that nugget in my back pocket. So if I do
If it
come
comes out
across
saying
some,
it was doctor
yeah,
prescribed. Mhm.
exactly. I'm just helping my cortisol levels right now.
Oh my God, I know. And that's the thing. Like when, when you love words and like we do, and you are switching genres and you are playing with different things. I mean, I think
Hmm.
it keeps you fresh. I really would like to stay in Cozy for quite a while. I mean, I just got here.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm thrilled to be here. I can't get over how incredibly generous people have been with whether it was to just review my book in the first place or just to tout it
Hmm.
out. I mean, people are
Hmm.
busy, I mean, and I
Hmm.
get that. So anything that, I'm just like, what do you need? So
Hmm.
it happens to be one of those writing and reading communities where the people are just really beautiful.
Hmm.
And that was something that we had in romance too, and I
Hmm.
think there's a similarity, maybe because it tends to be women dominated. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the upside is that I guess, just based on the demographic of people who read cozies, we're looking to feel good. And,
Yeah.
I think that I don't want to make assumptions for anybody else, but I know, at least for me, it's one of the genres where it seems to be maybe like a nice ecosystem, in the sense to where typically I find that the authors are a lot more, available, I guess,
Oh,
if
big
that
time.
makes sense. Yeah, and accessible. That's what I'm trying to say.
No,
And so,
and available
as
and
a reader,
accessible.
you can gush to them, and I mean, obviously, because I'm doing it now, and I think that makes it's a nice ecosystem, because we tell you how
I
much
love
we
that.
love your books, and then you feel
Ecosystem.
good, and
Yeah.
you're wanting to write more, and just everything is right in the world.
It really does. But I have a lot of readers who reach out to me, whether it's through Twitter or through, at least I'm not saying the Twitter and the Facebook, so I'm not that old. But, and they'll I am me. And I have, I've made friends that way. Janie Ellis, I'm just going to, who's this fabulous
Oh,
librarian who like
uh-huh.
reached out to me and was like, she says, I'm reading your book and I have a Daria shirt on as I'm reading about Sister Daria. And
That's amazing.
I'm like, you're now my new favorite person. I just in love with you. And so, because I knew she right away, she got what I was trying to do with Daria.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Uh-huh.
but it was just, so it's things like that if I was to email, I'm just trying to think of somebody. I mean, Rebecca Mackay, I love her. She wrote The Great Believers. It's high literary stuff. She's,
Mhm.
5 years to write the book. And she's actually
Mhm.
probably a little bit more accessible because you can like hit her on Twitter. But like there's like
Mhm.
3,000 people trying to reach her at a time,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
God bless, and nothing,
Yeah.
don't say that like I'm beating up on her because I'm not. But like there are times where, I would have loved to have, and I did with romance. So that was the funny thing. So like I was so obsessed with Christian Ashley that I was going through a really rough time in my life that I was,
Mhm.
I wrote her emails like, I love your book so much and my
Oh,
life
that's
over. Like,
amazing.
you're my
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
guess what? She wrote me back, and she wrote me back nice long things. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great. That always warms my heart. And I think it's just because I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. Whenever you consume media, you always think that the person who put it out is just like, not on a pedestal, but just this concept of a person. And so you expect to get, if you get anything at all, form letters or anything. And I mean, I guess that's the one great thing about social media, is that
Yeah.
it's made it easier to not only connect with people, but if the author or whoever person
Yes.
has a social media presence, you can kind of get a glimpse as to
Yeah.
who they are as a
And
person.
frankly, it's not like, I mean, because of social media, yes, because of the competition, because the book industry is so difficult, that anyone who is not being generous and kind and available for their readers, I'm like, who are you? Like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. any
Yeah.
sort of entitled, that's kind of, it's a little bit of a trigger for me. Like, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because, the truth is that everyone's a writer, but once you like put it out there, that's a really vulnerable thing to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and all you want is for someone to read it and to like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone comes to you and says, I love your book and I loved this, and you don't write them back, or you're just like, okay, yeah, thanks, or I'm just gonna have I mean, look, if I get like 100,000, I'd have to have an assistant, but
Right. Right.
but even then I would still try to say something a little bit personal. Like, I don't know, I just think it's a big deal. And it
Mm-hmm.
means a lot. And the truth is that, the readers don't owe us anything. We're just throwing it out
Mm-hmm.
there. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't ever, I tend to feel a bit more beholden because, I know what the authors have gone through. But, if
Mm-hmm.
I used to be like, I would feel like I'd have to finish a book. Now I'm like, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to write a bad review on Goodreads about it
Right. Right.
because I'm not an a-hole, but, I'm just not going to talk about it,
Right. Right.
and, but because I feel like my life's too short for a bad book, and there's just so many
There's
good.
too many out there, not yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not
So
feeling it.
you find that, I mean, so you're in this cozy space and you're doing this great show and you get to talk to everybody. Do you find that your tastes in cozies have, like, in terms of the subgenres, have they stayed the same or have they changed over time?
Well, first of all, I feel compelled to say that I have not talked to everybody, and I feel honored that I'm even getting to chat with you, being
Oh,
honest. But as far as my tastes go, um, and I hate to admit this, but I think that they probably stay the same. And I think that the reason is that I had a love for them before I started my channel. And
yeah.
so even if I didn't have this channel, I'd still be perpetually reading my favorites and then also trying to find new ones. Now, I think one thing that has changed from having this channel is that the books that I've added to my want to read list has grown exponentially. I haven't gotten around to everything yet, but
I
I
know.
don't think my
PBR never
taste has
goes down.
changed because I love everything.
That's
So,
the problem.
I've got my favorites in terms of authors, in terms of locations or themes, I
Yeah.
guess. But I genuinely love everything, and so
If it's
it's
good,
really
it's good.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. Aside from Amish, the only other genre that I can think of at the top of my head that I haven't read that I recently found out was a thing from another channel. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Cortagonist. I'm not sure if you've heard of her, but she does a wonderful videos about cozies. But anyway, she did a video recently about science fiction cozies, which I
No, I
had no
saw that.
idea
I
was a
saw that.
thing.
I saw the preview for the post, and I haven't
Uh-huh.
had a chance to read it. No, because I subscribe to her channel too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, and it's so being in this
she made
space
it
has
sound
allowed
good,
me to
didn't it?
kind of tap into that. Yeah, and so I'm like, I didn't know it was a thing. So she brought it to my attention. Now, if I would have kind of come across it naturally,
No way. Totally
maybe,
with you
maybe
on that.
not. I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't give it a second glance because I wouldn't know that it's a thing.
Yeah,
So since I know that it's a thing, and somebody who I trust their taste, I'm
that's
like,
very
oh
true.
yeah, she liked that. I'm
I
on
mean,
board. Sign me up. So
I
I
totally agree with you. It's true because,
yeah.
especially, like, no one wants to be saying something negative about someone, and I get that. But in the same
Hmm.
instance, like, this is one of the reasons why I can't be like a reviewer like you're doing, because the thing is I actually like it when someone says to me in a review, okay, this is what I liked, but this is where they fell down, and
Hmm.
because then I get to see what their taste level
Hmm.
is, and
Hmm.
what they tend to gravitate towards or against.
Right.
And I appreciate that. Like, there was some reviews that I was reading. Now, it happened to be for my book, but I also then read some of their others. Like, they were
Uh-huh.
really annoyed that it was a millennial heroine, and there was
Can't
another
please
thing,
everybody.
they didn't like the pop culture references, and I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like,
Yeah,
to me, that's a
that is very
plus.
interesting. Me too.
But
Yeah.
like, for
Well, I mean, and I
example,
guess that's where again, I know you mentioned like readers don't know the authors anything, but I personally, as a reader, I stay away from reviews. Now I will watch videos where people talk about the idea of the book, like what it's about. But in terms of a review, I can't say review. Wow. In terms of a review,
I couldn't say apothecary. I can't even do it now. Apothecary. I can't do it. I was on with Esme Addison with her great book, A Self Trouble, and I said it's set in an apothecary. I can't even do it now. And I had it right the other day. I don't know what it is. And people are going to be like,
our brains are short wiring.
It is. It's me. I didn't have dinner yet, so like I get stupid before I eat.
Yeah.
Your book is so good. I just can't pronounce it.
Yeah. I know what it is, but yeah, I don't listen or read reviews because I am a very influenced reader. Not that I won't give a book a shot, but because based on whatever the review is, if I do read the book, I'm just waiting to get to that part that they are talking about. And I hate reading a book, waiting for something, whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it or whatever. So I don't read reviews at all. Yeah. So, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on, how I take the book. But yeah, I think that when it comes to cozies, there's a space for everyone. And if a reviewer, so ironically, I will try and write a review, not at all professional, but just to kind of get my thoughts out there. And I try to make it very clear why I liked or disliked something, so that it's obvious that it's a personal opinion rather than an actual flaw of the book. And I think that that's the difference with, why somebody may or may not like a book. It's well written, but did you not like the pop culture references because they were wrong or because you don't like those? So, and I think that is valuable feedback as an author for sure.
It is. And, I love them, so I'm keeping them, but it's
right.
But I respected what she was saying. I respect if someone says to me, for example, obviously without giving it away, the killer in my book is not someone that you easily find. Is that
a critique? I don't
know, but someone they wanted to have more clues.
More friends.
And so then I realized there's really a couple. So this is what's interesting to me. So there are people who read cozies who truly want to be surprised. Like they kind of like it if you can, give something predictable. And then there's some who kind of actually want to be one step ahead. They really want to feel like they're solving it and they get it before. And both are valid. Both are totally, it depends on the kind of, well, it depends. Are you someone who likes spontaneity or are you someone who likes more predictability? And again, there's not a wrong answer to that.
Right. That's so interesting. I know for me personally, and I guess, I'm so glad I am this way because I know that you can't change what side of the coin you fall on, but I read cozies. I could care less about figuring it out or the mystery. I am literally along for the ride because I'm never trying to, and it's so funny because I will kind of describe to my husband every time, my progress on a book. And I'm like, oh, it's that guy. Oh, like anytime a new character enters the scene.
Is he a reader?
I have no rational
reading to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, he's a reader. And he's definitely one. He doesn't read cozies, but he's read his fair share of mysteries and we've watched enough. He's really good at connecting those clues and he likes to do that. Whereas I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm in a mixed marriage. It's a mixed marriage. And I'll tell you, let me tell you something, my friend. Did you know, from the first date on that he was a reader? Because this was my mistake. And by the way, love of my life. Totally. This goes to show you that people, when I used to do matchmaking actually, and people would sit there and give me the whole list of what they wanted. And I'm like, tell me about your mother and father. And I would just go, and I had 4 marriages. So and the thing is that I learned that from my own case because I had this list of what he had to be a reader and and it didn't have to be my stuff, but it had to be thought provoking and he had to indie emo music and he had to complaint rock, all pre-hipster shit.
Yeah.
So, in the meantime, and I got so enthralled with David. We had known each other's children, so it was kind of like a reunion. And it wasn't until the third or fourth date that I asked him, like, "So, what's your favorite book, or what's your favorite?" I said, first, I said, "Who's your favorite band?" And he said, "Wings." And I'm like, "Okay, no, really, who's your favorite band?" And I married him. Happy, you know. And but if I had asked that on the first date, I wouldn't have seen him again.
Right.
So I think it's like the powers that be upstairs. They go, "Oh, we're gonna put all the adrenaline and hormones and stuff. So, oh, he's so cute. Oh, we have this in common. Oh, do you remember this one? Do you remember that one?" So I got hooked. And it didn't matter. And then when I asked his favorite book, he didn't come up with one. I mean, but I was already in love with him. What was I going to do?
Yeah. Right. So for me, I think, and I mean, it's too late to say what I would care about because obviously I've already got what I like. I'm good. I'm set. But if I had to give an answer, I think it would be less about are they a reader or not? Because I totally get the glamorization of like, let's read in bed together. That's not what my ideal is. My ideal is you can do whatever you want, but just know not to bother me when I'm reading. So as long as you understand that, then it's a match.
I love it. I love it. Leave me alone until I need you to do something or that I want to see your face.
Right, exactly. And if I want to talk to you about this and you have no idea what plot or book I'm talking, like just nod occasionally, and then that's it.
What part of the birth order are you in your household? From your family of origin? Are you like oldest? Are you an only? Are you middle child?
I'm an only.
I knew it. I knew it. I'm an only child.
I've been told multiple times that it comes across, and I try to figure out what it is, but I can't.
I'm an only child. My husband's an only child.
Interesting.
And I did not read until I was like 20 years in. Like, you know, I'm a social worker. Like, birth order was like a really big thing a few years ago. And I finally decided to read it, and they're like, the worst combination are two only children. That's like the worst marriage possible because all they do is parallel play. Like she's doing her thing, the partner's doing this one, and I'm like, yeah, and that's what makes it awesome.
Where is the issue? I don't understand.
I didn't get it. Now, what's your husband? What order is he?
He's the youngest.
That's why you guys work. They say like only child or oldest with the youngest because
interesting.
Because you're used to sort of being in charge and to doing things a certain way. And he probably lets you kind of do your thing, sort of.
Yeah, enough to where I'm
not just based on the research.
I think he's got a semblance of control. That's so interesting.
Isn't that fascinating? But now I know why I love it so much. Like it's like
I mean, it all makes sense, honestly.
It really does. I think it's hysterical. I wanted to say, "Are you an only child?" But I'm like, I can't go out of the gate like that because then I'm signing myself up for failure. That's why I got
to it an hour in, and now it's like, okay, now all cards are on the table, and now we know exactly why it's been like this.
I love it. So, how long have you been married?
Well, we have been together for a while, like 13 years.
Honey, here's the calendar. I don't remember.
The door's closed, so I can't shout out there. But we've been married 3 years. But we've been together for longer than that. So
you've got that more. You don't have the 3 year feel to it. It feels more longer. Not quite 20 years where
not quite.
You're too young for that. So, but that
we've got a while to go, but I'm looking forward to it.
No, it's all good. But that's another thing is that it's whether you're with somebody, whether you're happily single, you just want to just curl up with your books and do your thing. It's really not about.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And I'm just stop interrupting. And he just wants to watch Law and Order all the time, and he watches the same shows over and over again. And I'm like, I actually know what happens in this one. Like I see Lenny Briscoe. I know his character.
Right.
I see you, Liv. I love you, but get it together.
They're formulaic. I get it. They always come on in marathons.
In the meantime, I just started watching season 1, episode 1 of Murder, She Wrote. I'm going real old school.
Oh my God. That's my.
It's on
Sorry,
Amazon
we're at
Prime.
the hour, and we're gonna have to like talk another time after you've watched it, because when I tell you, Harper, that is one of my favorite shows. And I read the books. I can send you a link to a video that I did talking all about it. Anyway,
I
you're
love
gonna enjoy that. I think that as a fan and as a regular human being who watches it, it's a very entertaining.
it is, you know, and I used to make fun of it. Well, you know, growing up in South Florida, it is God's waiting room. It's a lot of older people. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we like to say in Yiddish, alta cocker, which means old fart. And so, in the meantime, I'm getting closer to their age. So, ha, 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 you know. But, so Murder, She Wrote. And what was the other one? Oh, God, I could see his face. Old guy in the court.
Columbo?
No, not Columbo.
Not
That would be
Columbo.
that would have been cool. Anyway, and I, as a kid, made fun of people for watching Murder, She Wrote, because I was like everything would stop at that time. And then
Yep.
I don't know, I was sick or something. I had mono in college, and it was on, and I'm like, this is awesome. I know.
Yeah.
I take back my words.
Yeah.
That's the story of your life. Whatever you said you were into is what your whole life will be about.
Joke's always on you. Yeah. And then you like try to rationalize how stupid you were back when you were younger and you said you'd never do it. And this is how things go.
The only good thing about being stupid when you're younger is that it makes for better cocktail conversation. Like, you know, you're at a party, you've had a couple of drinks, and you're like, I remember in the 80s, or I remember, and we had no video, thank God, you know, or internet.
Thank God. Yep.
All my mistakes before the internet, honey. So that's good.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And you can judge up your stories because there's no actual social media posts showing what actually happened.
Because they're getting older. It's perfect. I'm like, yes, that's what happened.
Whatever sounds the most interesting, that's what happened.
I love it. All right.
Okay. Yes, same. I want to thank you again so much for sitting down and talking with me. This was a blast.
I'm like ready to have a regular like podcast with sponsors and everything. I'm gonna have like Dennis Shepard come on.
I know. Honestly, I mean, our chemistry just can't be matched. Honestly,
I know. Listen.
Okay.
True.
Thank you again. We're gonna talk later offline, just because I love chatting with you.
You know, also do me a favor. Why don't you? And you figure out how you want to pick them or whatever. But I'd love to give away a couple of print books to your.
Oh, you're so generous! Oh my goodness!
You know,
thank you so much.
That's just delicious, and you know, you're and you know, it's everyone deserves a present, right?
Yes. Who doesn't love presents? I totally agree. Okay. Well, then we will hook it up after all of this. But you go eat. Again, thank you so much, and we'll just chat later.
I'm telling you.
Thank you, Harper.
Thank you, and I'll give you my cell. Text me late at night when you can't sleep. Okay.
Awesome.